Good evening, it's Adam here again with another quick instant movie review for you. So today I went and saw Mafia Mama. This is the film starring Toni Collette, Monica Bellucci, and it tells the story of Kirsten, played by Toni Collette. She's a pretty awkward suburban wife to an absolute dropkick of a husband who has just cheated on her in the basement of their home. He doesn't do much except for bum around and play his guitar. She gets a message that her grandfather has passed away and left his fortune to her in Italy, the family business. And she is convinced by her friend to just go and get amongst it, go and find an Italian bloke at the same time and do some eat, pray, and some other stuff. So she throws caution to the wind, gets there, and discovers that the family business is the mafia, and that she basically is now the head of this mafia organisation and is helped by her assistant, or secretary, played by Monica Bellucci, yes, and she basically has to try and steer this particular company into a particular way, transform it. At the same time, she falls in love with a very handsome Italian gentleman called Lorenzo, and yeah, stuff happens. So this film is directed by Catherine Hardwicke. She originally directed the Lords of Dogtown, I think it was, which was the skatey film with Heath Ledger. It was one of his first big films. And went on to then direct Twilight, and did Little Red Riding Hood, and did a fair few other films. I think she was part of the crew that got Holly Hunter an Oscar nomination for Catherine's film 13, which is actually a pretty good film. And has worked with Toni Collette once before called Miss You Already, for a film called Miss You Already, which had Drew Barrymore in it. Anyway, she directs this film. Now, I was watching this film, and then after I watched it, I sort of went through and looked at a few bits and pieces and you know, interviews and so on and so forth. And I was interested to see in the credits that Toni Collette is produced by Toni Collette. Toni Collette is a producer on this film. There is an absolute truckload of executive producers on this film, but she is the main person who produced this work. And in a lot of interviews, she was saying that this is a film about female empowerment. I don't agree. I don't really think so. I don't think that this is a film about female empowerment, because I believe everybody in this film is completely and utterly a cardboard cutout fake. There is nothing about any of these people that feels ultimately real at all. The mafia bosses are very stereotypical. The henchmen are very stereotypical. And unfortunately, I really like Toni Collette, and I think most people do with her acting and her acting ability. She's been in a lot of really interesting films. I saw Black Balloon the other day, the Australian film about the mother who's looking after an autistic son. Hugely confronting. She's amazing in that. I mean, you can have your Muriel's Weddings, you know, and so on and so forth. But, you know, that sort of film really does show her acting chops. And, of course, United States of Tara, she was phenomenal in that series. But here, everything is extremely one note and loud and quite obnoxious. Like, she is a character that, you know, has been handed this problem and you know, she's probably the funnest thing on screen, but it's everything is very one note in this film, and I don't see any female empowerment because she's a bit of a dropkick of a character. She's just hopeless, and her husband's hopeless, and I don't believe that the character arcs for anyone in this film is at all realised. There's progression in characters, but there is no arc and there's no change in the end result. their story goes along, but there's no arc in their personality and their characteristics, anything. There's a moment where it's going to happen, but then it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to pretend to be this person for a moment or two, but it doesn't really stick along. And actually, the last shot of the film really does show you that nothing has changed. So what was the point of all this, really? Monica Bellucci is absolutely beautiful to look at, but her dialogue is delivered in such an odd tone. It's like the first time she's ever spoken English. And her character is very odd as well. There's one moment where I thought, oh, hang on, is there lesbian undertones going on, which would have completely defeated a lot of what the film was, I think, going for by the sound of what, Tony Collette, the producer, was saying. It's just very strange moves. And there's a moment in this film where a certain character was supposed to have died mortally from a wound to an area which is not the heart, not the chest, not the head, not the eye, nothing. A very odd spot. If you do see this film, you'll realize what I'm talking about. But the big strange thing about this film is this. It has quite an interesting premise, and it could be a really great series. It could also have been just a really good, solid, tight film. But it kind of feels like some people are in the wrong film and some people are in the right film. And I think this film could have been really played with either full slapstick, really delved into it, or very dark with a comedic front performance. Now, I'm thinking films a little bit like Spy. Now, I did actually, when I watched this film, I did think, well, Toni Collette's character could pretty much be Melissa McCarthy, and you would have been pretty much on the same wavelength. But that film worked so well because the character had some progression. They really delved into it, and they did not cut loose. Spy has some really funny, gross out black sequences in it that really work. This one has scenes that have dismemberment, that have eyes popping out of heads, people getting stabbed in their groins until there's nothing left. There's a lot of gross out, pretty full-on bloodletting in this film. In a film that almost plays like a Sunday afternoon treat, there's actually a big shootout scene in this where I don't know how anyone did not get shot more than they did, and there wasn't more bloodletting than there was. People pull out Uzis, and it feels like they're randomly shooting at people. And these guys are supposed to be, proficient killers. I don't think they could shoot, Donald Duck in a playground attraction. Like they couldn't. There's no gunplay. John Wick would be like, just give me the guns and I'll sort it out for you. It's just very odd. There's some very odd moments in this film, and none of it really hangs together. There's one scene in particular that I'm thinking of that two scenes happen in the one location. So the shot lasts for about 10 minutes and it's just worthless. Nothing happens. Yeah. What annoyed me about this film is that I think there was more character development in an independent film that I saw the night before than I did see in this big budget Hollywood film, where I felt like people are just farting around for, over 100 minutes. And I just did not need to be that long. So I didn't think it was overly funny. I didn't think it was at all charming. I didn't think it was all progressive. I did think it was a bit regressive as a film and as what the film was intending to do. I think the male characters of this are all written to be misogynistic pigs, which I think is unfair, particularly a scene in an advertising agency, which I thought was just really, no one talks like that anymore. I'm sorry. And yeah, nothing was real at all. So I'm going to give Mafia Mama, I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. I think that's probably being quite generous. Probably closer to a 4.5. I just feel like, don't even get me started on the court scene in this film. I can't even talk about it. Anyway, Mafia Mama, 5 out of 10. Good night.